Hello everyone, welcome to Simulation. I'm your host Alan Sakian, and today we have an incredible privilege to be sitting down with Chester Santos. How's it going?
Great, I'm happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Chester, you've been inspiring me for the last over a year. It's been amazing. I'm still trying to pick up all of your skills and trying to apply them to my life and my understanding of how to keep up with all of this potential power we have in here. So Chester he's known as the International Man of Memory. He's the 2008 US Memory Champion, and he is the recent author of Instant Memory Training for Success. And that book's doing really well.
Yeah, it was a bestseller in the UK and the W.H. Smith stores in the UK. It was right next to Harry Potter on the shelves, which was kind of cool to see that. I have a new book coming out actually in May that will be published by Sterling, it's entitled Mastering Memory.
Nice, it's a good alliteration, Mastering Memory. Yeah. So yeah, Chester's activities are super relatable, and they just teach us so much about how to become better, and we're gonna dive into those. Thanks guys for tuning in. If you're gonna, this episode's gonna be about memory, about neuroscience, about consciousness, about being able to maximize our brain's capacity. We're gonna ask Chester a couple of our simulation questions as well. So you're traveling now all the time teaching people about how to fully encode information in their brains, to access these different ways that we can encode information to be able to remember it at a later time.
Yes, yeah, so I've given presentations now in more than 30 different countries. I really specialize in the business applications of memory skills, how they can benefit you by remembering presentations, reducing the amount of notes, or maybe getting to where you'll eventually use no notes at all, remembering important business-related facts and figures to demonstrate your expertise, to be perceived as more of an expert, foreign language vocabulary, exam material. Maybe you'll need to earn some sort of certification down the line in your career. Those are the types of things that I really focus on.
And businesses love that, because if you can go in having a much more outlined understanding in your head instead of on paper that you have to reference to, even better for the actual interpersonal relationship and conversation. For example, that would have worked really well on the Jordan Peterson event. I brought my whole pages of notes onto the stage, and I had things highlighted, but if I had come on fully memorizing those major points that I wanted to talk about by coming up with a story, walk us through that. So you go to the different organizations across the world, 30 countries now, it's amazing, and you're teaching them about this encoding process via things like the story method. Walk us down that a bit.
Yeah, I really specialize in annual corporate meetings and conferences where they want an entertaining and educational speaker to come in. So you're probably familiar with motivational speakers that they would have at those types of events. Yeah. So I do a similar sort of presentation, but with much more of an educational focus. So I will open with naming hundreds of people in the audience. My record is about 215 people in an audience so far. I'll just meet people before it starts, have them stand up, cover up their name tag, name the people. So that gets everybody's attention. Yeah. And then if it's for financial services types groups, because they deal with a lot of numbers, I'll do another demonstration where they will call out numbers. They'll go onto a screen behind me, and sometimes I'll repeat 100+ digits forwards and backwards from memory. So those demonstrations entertain the audience, really grab their attention, and then the rest of my presentation is basically, you all can do this as well. You can learn the techniques that I just used to pull this off, and you can apply those techniques to become more successful in your career and in your personal life.
Yeah. So it's just mind-blowing when you see somebody go up onto stage after just, one time being like, "Hi, what's your name?" "Oh, I'm Alan." "Oh, great, nice to meet you, Chester." And then you have already done your encoding at that moment when you meet them, and you did that 215 times when you met people, and then they all stood up in the audience, and you went one by one and gave all their names. And same thing with the numbers the random digits from 0 to 9 that you put up on the screen. So maybe walk us through that process of what you do When you meet somebody, how do you activate the different structures of the brain to memorize their name?
Okay, yeah, before I get into names specifically, I'll go into some general principles that apply to not only names, but really to improving your ability to remember any type of information.
Let's do it.
Step number one is take advantage of your visual memory. So try to take whatever it is that you are trying to commit to memory and turn it into a picture or series of pictures, something that you can visualize easily. And it's a skill that you can develop, even turning complex types of information into a series of visuals. We're very good at remembering things that we see. A couple of examples that I like to cite. Example one, a lot of times we will see someone that we could have met even years ago. Maybe years in the past we met them. A lot of times as soon as we see them, right away we remember their face. We know that we've met them somewhere before, but we can't seem to remember their name, right? That's a pretty common experience. Another situation that happens to us often, let's say you go to a party, one of your friends accompanies you to this party, and you're both there meeting a lot of new people. 2 weeks after that party is over, you're talking with your friend that attended with you, and your friend describes someone to you that you both met. Your friend says, remember the attorney that we met at that party a couple weeks ago? He's also a member of the tennis club. Given just that little bit of description, a lot of times right away, both of you can picture that guy from the party, right? You might even remember exactly what he was wearing when you met him, but a lot of times neither one of you can remember what the guy's name was, right? So why do those two things that I just described in terms of memory, why do they happen to us so often? It's because when we're meeting people, we actually see their face, right? Their face is recorded into our visual memory, but at no point do we see the name. The name is something much more abstract to us, right? So I teach people to take names and turn them into concrete visuals.
So Chester, I could think of chest.
Like yeah, you could think of a chest. Visualize a chest. That might be an aid. Yeah, and you know, like Mike, I would use a microphone a lot of times.
Yeah.
But this also works with names that you've never heard of before. So last year I gave speeches across Europe and the Middle East. A lot of times it was the first time I'd ever heard the name in my life, but I was still able to open naming hundreds of people by turning the name into a series of visuals. So if it's not as simple as something like Mike that we're familiar with, if it's a foreign name, you might need to break the name down by syllable and then just turn it into a series of images. But the point here, step one, is visualization is huge.
Yes.
Step two, after you have a visual, from there, try to involve as many additional senses as you can.
Yep.
Because as you are doing that, without realizing it, you are actually activating more and more areas of your brain, and you're building more and more connections in your mind to the information. So it just makes it so much easier to retrieve that information when you need it later. So I started at one point in an episode of PBS's Nova Science. The episode that I started was entitled How Smart Can We Get? Anybody watching this can see that for free, the whole thing on the PBS website. Maybe check it out at some point. I performed some crazy memory feats, and then I trained David Pogue, who's a tech industry correspondent for CBS News and also the New York Times. I trained him in ways to improve his memory on the show, and soon he was able to perform some cool memory feats. After that, they had some neuroscientists, brain scientists appear on the show, and the brain scientists, neuroscientists, talked about how it was, like how did that work? How was I able to pull off those feats of memory, and how could David Pogue do it with just a little bit of training? And they confirmed that it's because with these memory techniques that I've mastered over the years, and that we'll get into in a little bit more detail during this interview, we are actually recruiting extra areas of the brain. So areas of the brain that most people would never utilize when trying to commit information to memory. With these techniques, you're activating more of your brain, so it becomes so much easier to remember things. And part of this is learning to utilize additional senses. You may have at one point seen on a news program or documentary film a segment on autistic savants. Autistic savants often will have extraordinary memory ability in one or more areas. You've probably seen savants on TV that are good with really long strings of numbers. An interesting fact is that these savants, autistic savants, are much more likely statistically to be born with synesthesia, which is an intermingling of the senses. So activation of one sense will automatically activate one or more other senses.
That makes a lot of sense.
So what's happening is, without even trying, without much effort at all, they're automatically using a lot of their brain to encode certain types of information into their memory.
Whereas we're typically used to just going with one sense.
Exactly. So part of what I teach people is to try and activate manually more and more senses in order to activate more of your brain. And this, again, this will apply to names and anything at all.
Yeah.
Third thing you want to do from there, after you've visualized and you've gotten more and more senses involved, the third thing to keep in mind is to try to make all of that you're experiencing in your mind crazy, unusual, extraordinary in some way.
Exactly.
Yeah, because there is this psychological aspect to human memory. We all tend to remember things that catch us by surprise, that are really strange, unusual, you know, very extraordinary in some way, right? If during this interview right now, if right now some elephants crashed into this room, started spraying water all over us, right? If that actually happened right now, or, you know, people watching this, you know, online, if wherever they're at, if elephants just crashed into the room out of nowhere, sprayed water on them, that would stick in your memory probably for the rest of your life, that crazy, unbelievable, random occurrence, right? It might be stuck in your head forever without you even trying to commit that into memory, right? And although actually that process to this day is still not fully understood, how sometimes in one instant something will go straight into long-term memory, whereas other times, even with a lot of effort, we have trouble getting things in our long-term memory. Although it isn't fully understood, we do realize that there is this psychological aspect to human memory. There is this aspect to how our mind works, and we can actually harness that. We can take advantage of that aspect to our memory, and we can apply it to things that would be useful for us to remember. Facts and figures, presentations, foreign language vocabulary, and so on, right? Now, when you are able, with practice, to put all of those three things together, visualizing, getting more and more senses involved after that, and you make it all crazy, unusual, extraordinary, you're going to find that all of a sudden, wow, it is just so easy to remember things. We can now try that exercise that I like to do if you want to do it now.
I want to say one thing along the way is that I think part of the reason why memories go straight to long-term sometime is because they are in the 0.01% of the most profound things that you've ever experienced. And that's why they get encoded that quickly, potentially. And then I wanted to say, visualization, we'll do a relatable example here, but this I really want this to be remembered and practiced. Visualization, attach something visual, and then attach other senses like smell or taste or touch, attach more senses, and then make it. You taught me this too, is that you taught me to make things gigantic, make them massive, or to make them thousands of them, and that will really, again, they'll be so unusual that it'll stick in your head. Yeah,
so those are some ways as to how this can be made to be crazy, unusual, extraordinary. Maybe it's much bigger than you would expect something to be, or there's thousands. Those are some ways that you can make this this stuff that you're experiencing crazy, unusual.
So let's go through the example.
Yeah, so there's an exercise that I like to go through. It's just with some random words, so that in just a few minutes you can right away work with these sorts of techniques and get a sense for the power in them. I like to have audiences try to commit to memory the following random list of words. So
you guys want to try to commit?
Yeah, they can try.
You guys should try and commit this list of words to memory. He's going to give you a list of words, and then he's going to run through a story for you to be able to remember them, and then you're going to remember this long list of words from memory after just 2 minutes of hearing the story. You want to give it a go?
Okay.
All right, let's do it.
Okay.
Okay.
Am I coming in?
Yeah, sure, come in.
I thought I was just doing
Okay, you can do it from over here. Yeah. Do it from behind over here. All right.
Okay, so we have a volunteer back there that is not in on this, by the way.
Sure. Okay, we have
two volunteers from in the studio here now to attempt this. So the random list of words is going to be monkey, iron, rope, kite, house, paper, shoe, worm, envelope, pencil, river, rock, tree, cheese, and dollar. That's the random list of words. Now, normally when I recite that to audiences, people in the audience are looking at me as if, come on, there's no way I'm going to be able to remember that, not unless you give me a lot of time to do it. But in fact, you are going to know those words forwards and backwards with just about 2 minutes of study time. That's it. And believe it or not, without any further review, even next week, you will still know all of the words forwards and backwards. They're just going to be locked in your memory. How you will do this, the whole key here, is to, rather than approach this as a difficult and boring memory exercise, try to come at it more as just a fun exercise and using creativity and imagination, right? So that shift in your approach is going to make a huge difference in your ability to remember, right? So just have fun with this and visualize what I described to you, right? So the first word was monkey. So I just want you to visualize a monkey, right? Just see this monkey. It is dancing around. It is making monkey noises. Whatever a monkey would sound like. I'm working on the monkey impression. The point here is to see and hear the monkey, all right? The monkey now picks up a gigantic iron because that was the second word, all right? So just see this monkey dancing around with this gigantic iron. This is just like a movie or cartoon playing in your head, all right? The iron starts to fall, but a rope attaches itself to the iron. Maybe even feel it, maybe it feels sort of rough, all right? Really interact with it. You look up the rope and you see that the other end of the rope is attached to a kite. The kite's flying around in the air. You reach up and try and touch it. Maybe it's just out of your reach, the kite. The kite now crashes into a house. Really see it smash into this house. House was the next word, all right? You notice that this house is completely covered in paper. For some reason, it's completely covered in paper. Picture that. A shoe appears magically out of nowhere. It starts to walk all over the paper. Maybe it's messing up the paper. Just see that shoe, okay? The shoe smells pretty badly, so you decide to investigate and see why. You find a little worm crawling around inside of that shoe. Really see the smelly worm. The worm now jumps out of the shoe and into an envelope. Maybe it's going to mail itself or something. I don't know. Envelope was next. Picture that. Just see it as best you can. A pencil appears out of thin air. It starts to write very quickly on the envelope. Really see that pencil. The pencil now jumps into a river. There's a huge splash. Just see that. River was next. You notice the river's crashing into a giant rock. All right? Picture that. The rock flies out of the river now and into a tree. It crashes into this tree. You notice that this tree is growing cheese. You probably haven't seen a tree like that. It's growing cheese. And out of each piece of cheese shoots a dollar. A dollar shoots out of the cheese. Last word was dollar. I'm going to very quickly go through this again, and your job is to replay through this little story. So we started out with a monkey. The monkey was dancing around with an iron. What attached? It was a rope. The other end of the rope was attached to what? A kite. The kite then crashed into a house. What was it covered in? Paper. What walked on it? A shoe. Something was crawling the shoe. It was a worm. The worm jumped into what? An envelope. What wrote on it? A pencil. Pencil jumped into what? It was a river. What did the river crash into? A rock. The rock flew into what? A tree. What was it growing? Cheese. What shot out? a dollar. So now it should be incredibly easy to recite the entire random list of words by just going through that story in your mind and recalling each major object that you encounter. So go ahead and try to recite those for us.
Okay, so monkey, iron, house, paper,
Something before the river.
Yeah, it went into it. The worm went into an envelope.
Oh, yeah, envelope. There's a pencil.
Then the pencil, then the river,
Yep.
then the rock, then the tree, then the cheese, and the dollar.
Yep.
Nice work, guys. Nice work. Would one of you brave volunteers like to go backwards? Try it out backwards.
So it would be dollar, cheese, tree,
Rock,
river, and then
pencil, envelope,
worm.
house.
No.
Oh, shoe,
Yep.
house.
Paper house.
Oh, paper house.
Yep.
Okay.
And then it goes kite, rope, iron, monkey.
You got it. Great job. Awesome.
Wow.
So
Awesome.
great work there. So that right there is called the story method, all right? It's just one of many techniques that memory champions like myself use to pull off these feats of memory. So over the years, I've been on a lot of different TV shows performing memory feats, Science Channel, Discovery Channel. I'm about to be on CBS News Sunday morning coming up here in March. I trained one of my CEO clients for the show, and also Nancy Giles from that show, CBS News Sunday Morning, the popular national morning show. There's nothing different about my brain compared to everyone else's. I've just learned these techniques that are very powerful and effective. Again, anybody can learn to do this with just the right techniques and a little bit of practice training. You can do so much more with your memory than you currently are able to, and really this can give you a huge advantage. This can set you far apart from other professionals. This can really help you out in your career and in your personal life. I tell people, you know, in preparing for meetings with clients or potential clients, when you spend just a little bit of time memorizing 10 key advantages that you can offer, 10 things about your competitors, why you're better than them, why your service is better, that little bit of preparation, that little bit of implementation of memory skills really goes a long way, and people are much more impressed with you. And also, I like to say, the bottom line is, whether or not it is truly the case, it doesn't matter. This is up for debate. Maybe you'll have some neuroscientists in here that will talk about it at some point. Intelligence. We don't know exactly if memory is related to intelligence, but what we do know is that the perception is that someone with a razor sharp memory, we perceive them to be intelligent, right? After meeting with them, if they seem to know everything, we're really impressed. We perceive them to be intelligent, as well as the most of an expert in their particular field. And those are the people that I'm going to hire. Those are the people that I would refer to my clients, to my friends. I've been a one-man business now for about 10 years, an entrepreneur for 10 years now, and I've had to hire attorneys, you know, PR people, marketing people, web developers. And when I meet with someone I'm going to potentially hire, I might be on the extreme end because of what I do, but you know, if someone is always answering my questions with, you know, I've done some work with that, but I've got to refamiliarize myself, let me do a little research, I'll get back to you, I will probably never hire that person. The ones that I'm going to go out of my way to hire are the people, when I meet with them, my impression is, wow, they seem to know everything. That's really the expert, you know. So memory skills can really help you with that.
The visualization is so important. That was the story method. Again, there were so many visuals. There were so many gigantic things. There was the touching of the rope. There was the smelling of the shoe. There were all of these senses that were incorporated into that story method. And then especially for science, so I am a science communicator, so I am learning as much as I can, a breadth of different knowledges, myriad. They're all over the place across sciences, and one of the ways that I definitely tap into all these different sciences, I figure out how they're interconnected, and then I make stories out of them. And they're visualizations that I get. Things like understanding the cosmos all the way down to understanding molecules and DNA and the human right in between. And then that whole visualization enables me to remember that forever. It's so profound.
So you hit on something that I also cover in my presentation sometimes, and that is that with this type of memory training, you will actually develop your visualization ability. You'll be able to create the images in your mind more quickly, see the imagery more clearly, and many studies have shown, as you described, that visualization ability is linked to more than memory. It's actually linked to overall intelligence because it helps to improve your understanding. When you can take complex information and turn it into a simple series of things you can visualize, it really improves your understanding. So visualization is an important skill that is beneficial, and you will develop it with this sort of training.
Yeah, and I remember this example as well. I really think we need to hone in on visualization because I feel like it's the most simple one for people to get, but you can guide and decide on if that's the case. But this one example that you give in your talks that I think is so interesting is throwing up you're in your living room and then Trump and Clinton show up behind podiums and you're not asking any questions, you're just sitting back, and then you activate all the senses through this conversation, because all of a sudden they're throwing pies at each other. That's absurd.
Yes.
And then you're visualizing that, and then you see that you're smelling the pies, and then you go and you touch the pie and you taste the pie off their face. That's a whole beautiful way of activating all the senses, and again, you can't forget that experience.
Yeah, so I like to use that depending on the presentation, depending on whether or not I have enough time to put that in there, but I like to use that to warm up people's visualization ability and to get them working with these principles right away. That crazy episode with a presidential debate turns into a pie fight. Yeah.
I love that one. So okay, let's walk through, maybe everyone is doing something in their job every day.
Yeah.
So let's walk through something that, let's make this relatable. Let's say that I'm going into work and I need to remember a couple things. And let's say the couple things I need to remember are I need to email a potential new client. I need to have a conversation with my boss about a raise. I need to remember to take out the trash tonight when I get home, and I need to make sure to get some spinach on the way home as well. So right there we have 4 items. We have, so we have negotiating with the boss, we have getting a new business deal, a new client, we have the getting spinach on the way home, and then the trash at night.
Yeah.
So how would you walk us through something that would, you don't even need to write it down in a note, like walk us through.
Yeah, so, email is the first thing you had mentioned, right? So you might just imagine like that envelope symbol for the email with the envelope open. Yeah, I mean, for something like that, it's very easy to just use the story method.
Yeah, let's do it.
So, coming out of that envelope is a bunch of money because you want to, ask for a raise, right? And then, the money, however, is falling into a trash can because you need to remember to take out the trash. And then spinach is shooting out of the trash can because you need to remember to get spinach at the grocery store. So you can, to-do lists are very, very simple application of this.
That's a good one.
But beyond just remembering things like that, there is another benefit to all of this, and that is that you can go ahead and still write down your to-do list, but I would also commit it to memory and rely on your memory first. If your memory then fails, you go to the to-do list, because getting into this habit, it forces you to exercise your memory on a daily basis. And the more you exercise your memory in general, the better your memory is going to get, even independent of using the memory techniques, because you're exercising that process of encoding things into memory and retrieving them, right? The brain is very trainable. The more you force your brain to perform a particular function over and over again, the more it signals to your brain that that's something important for you to be able to do, so your brain makes itself better at doing it, right? The opposite is also true. The more you don't have your brain perform something, so if you're always writing things down, if you're always entering things into electronic devices, what you're telling your brain is, you know what, at this point in my life, it's no longer important for me to be able to remember things, so it makes sense that you are going to start to lose that ability over time, right? When you think about it, when we're younger, we're always using our memory, right? By engaging in schooling, we're learning, throughout all of our schooling years, we're learning tons of information from a wide variety of areas. You're being tested on your recall for quizzes, exams, to write papers. They say when you first start a new job, you have to learn a lot of new things and recall them to perform your job properly. But then for most of us, we enter this 20, 30 plus year period where for the most part, things have just become a routine, right? You're just doing the same types of things day in and day out. You're not really engaging your memory as much. Also, when you think about it, when you are younger, a lot is new to you when you're younger, right? So your brain is constantly being stimulated all the time in so many different ways, but we all reach a certain point in our lives where our brain really is not that much is new to us, right? So our brains are not as stimulated in general later in our lives as they were early in our lives, where really a lot was new to us all the time, right? So what I talk about is the positive aspect of that is if you actually make it a point to exercise your memory and work it out throughout your lifetime, you can keep it strong and really improve it at any age. So some people don't believe that. They're just stuck on this idea that someone that's younger in age is going to have a better memory than someone older in age. But you know, I have 10 years experience now teaching memory seminars around the world, and I can tell you that I've seen so many people, believe it or not, in their 60s and 70s completely outperform working professionals in their 20s and 30s in terms of memory tasks. And I've seen people in their 20s where already their memory is not as good as you would think it is. And it's more about who is really engaging their brain, who's exercising their memory, exercising their brain really in general. Those people, in my opinion, have a much better chance of being, you know, staying sharp or even later in their years.
Yeah, you said a couple things there that I really liked. In the early education system, I never remember being trained to use other senses to be able to practice encoding information. So that could be something interesting to bring to kids at younger ages. And then also, I thought this was really important, is that when I take notes, I'm already telling myself that, nah, I'm not going to practice memorizing this. I'm going to just put it in notes. I need to be very aware of that. I need to actually practice, like maybe walk us through. I know a lot of people take notes on life. You go and watch a video, you write down some really interesting things that you learned. Maybe, again, there's a better way to do that. Maybe you go back through that note and then you create a story about and activate different visual parts of your mind to remember that. And then then you put the note away and you recall those maybe 5 or 7 really interesting things about what you just watched and learned.
Yeah, so again, I totally think it's fine to take notes as long as you are not just relying on the notes alone. So I encourage people to try to commit a lot of that information to memory and use your memory first. If your memory then fails you, go ahead and use the notes. Again, the brain is very trainable, so the more you use your memory, the better it's going to get in general. One example, this was on a science show. They showed a segment where a guy was in an unfortunate accident and a pole went through a certain part of his brain, so he completely lost the ability to perform certain functions. But with rehabilitation, other parts of the brain completely rewired itself. Wow. So other parts of the brain took over and he regained the ability to perform some of those functions because the brain rewired itself. The brain is incredibly trainable. So again, the more you force your brain to do something over and over again, it tells your brain that's important for you to be able to do, so your brain will make itself better at doing it. But the opposite is also true.
Yeah. So I think you're nailing it again. You're like, write it down, have notes.
You can do that, but commit it to memory as well.
Commit it to memory, practice that
Don't just shut off your brain, don't just shut off your memory and rely on all these devices. There have been some incidents that have made the news where, maybe I shouldn't name any names because I don't want to get in trouble for calling people out on this, but there's been incidents where famous people have been on TV having to give some sort of presentation, the teleprompter malfunctions. Yeah, correct. And they just seem like a buffoon, right? Because they should know 2 or 3 things about this topic they're talking on. At least, But at least, but they can't say anything and the interview has to end right then and there. I don't want to say who, but. And then, so this is it ties me back to understanding science again, or understanding just even the general world around us, because I've been referring to this so many times now. It just encoded into my mind just really recently. Nassim Taleb's been talking about this Lindy effect, and it's just simply put is like this cup or the wheel. These things have been around so long, thousands of years. The likelihood that the wheel or the cup is going to be around in thousands of more years is very high, versus something like maybe Snapchat or an app that was just developed last year is probably only going to be around another year. It's only been around a year. So that whole idea, again, I'm making these visuals of literally seeing people
make wheels and seeing people make the original cups that were used, and that is so amazingly helping me remember that. And that's the thing, is I feel like I need to start practicing that for a lot of the really important things that I learn. I need to start visualizing what I'm writing down in my note, and then trying to recall that over and over again, and using things like giganticism or thousands of them, or whatever these training methods are. Maybe I smell something or touch it. So
so there are a lot of other techniques that I cover on top of the story method. I have an online course, more than 6 hours of interactive training, but we're hitting on, you know, some of the basic principles here in this short interview. And even just putting forth an effort to visualize more will improve your retention. So I ask people to do that when they're reading. So while you're reading, try to see what you're reading almost like a movie or something playing in your head. It is really going to improve your retention of what you're reading. So you're already doing that. So you will retain more by even just implementing the simple idea of visualization.
Exactly.
But there's a lot of other things you can do as well.
I think you're also nailing it there too. While you're reading an article, a web post, whatever you're reading, book, just visualize along the way. It also makes it more interesting, doesn't it, when you get to use your imagination to
so for students, I always point out that using these sorts of memory techniques, it is a much more fun and interesting way to go about committing things to memory that would otherwise be very boring to commit that to memory, but yet you're going to need to know it for the exam, right? So using these techniques, it's more fun and interesting for sure.
What are we at? Okay, so we have some more time. I want to ask about, I mean, Chester's done some crazy things. You memorized a stack of 52 playing cards in 90 seconds.
Yeah, at one point I was able to do it in a little bit less than 90 seconds when I was really training a lot to win the US Memory Championship. Again, the same principles apply. There's another technique that I would use on top of the main principles, and that is something called the journey method. People have probably seen this even in on TV shows, like I've heard in that show Sherlock, that Sherlock Holmes uses a memory palace to commit things to memory. So that's what the journey method basically is. So this idea originated with the ancient Greeks. The technique was known as the method of loci, L-O-C-I, meaning location. The Roman orators used it to give speeches hours in length for memory without any notes. So the famous orator Cicero used this technique. So Roman room method is another name for it, journey method, and also memory palace. People may have heard of the technique referred to as memory palaces. What this involves is using locations from your environment that you're very familiar with, and you will just place imagery that reminds you of what you want to remember along these locations from your environment.
Like your living room or bedroom at home.
Exactly, because our spatial memory is also very good. So we can remember, you can easily pull up in your mind, where is your TV? Think about what's close to that. Maybe it's the coffee table, close by is the couch. It's so easy for us to pull that up in our memory, right? Places that we're familiar with, objects around the room, the ordering of those objects, that's all, it takes no effort for us to do that. So you can take advantage of that and place images on the TV, on the coffee table, on the couch, that remind you of this much more abstract type of information.
Like on the TV would be the little email thing with money coming out.
Yeah, so that's another approach. Rather than building a story, use this journey method. And I recommend to use the journey method over the story method when you're dealing with really large bodies of data.
Interesting.
Because with the story method, one disadvantage is if you're missing one part of the story, the rest of it is gone, right? You're missing a link in the chain there, basically. So, but with the journey method, because you're using locations from your environment, if you've committed to memory 1,000 pieces of information, if there were 2 locations, you can't see the images there, you still have 998 pieces of information locked in your memory. So that's one advantage. I would recommend using the journey method if it's really large bodies of data that you're dealing with.
Would you say that as you use your living room more and more, that you get better and better at placing objects in it and remembering the path that you take and remembering that information that's there?
That is an advantage, yeah, but there's an advantage there, but there's also a disadvantage. Yeah, you're going to become much more fluid with using a journey the more you use it, but at the same time you don't want to use one journey too much, because then you've got too many images there and things start to get all jumbled together. So you want to create as many journeys as you can. So I have CEO clients that I work with all over the country. We do sessions over the phone, 1 hour a week over the phone. It works over the phone because we're just doing visual exercises, right? These guys all started out with 25 locations from their office, 25 locations from their residence, 25 from their grocery store. Now they all have hundreds of locations available. You just need to be systematic about it, just 25 at a time.
From your home, you map out 25 locations,
like then
restaurants,
25
bars, grocery stores, gas stations.
The key is being, consistent, and eventually you will have hundreds of locations. So at first, it sounds really daunting to people, but it's not that difficult, believe it or not, if you're consistent in your training, to eventually have hundreds, if not thousands, of basically mental filing cabinets, storage places for things that you would want to learn. And then this is just incredibly powerful. This is almost like a superpower that you have, that you can use in your life to really just commit to memory anything right away.
And then I'm linking 2 visual things together. I'm linking both. I live in the Mission, so I'm linking the Mission Theater with massive spinach leaves growing out the top of it, and then I'm linking the burrito shop that's right down the street with me needing to make another business deal, and there's money that's all filling up with it. So I'm linking these visuals, and then I can follow the same path with different visuals the next time. Post office, gas station. I mean, that's a really interesting location. So this is the story method and the journey method based on location.
The journey method is based on locations. Yeah,
that's cool.
Yeah.
So here's some questions that I usually ask people that come on the show, but I think that this one is especially really close to you. Memetics, the cultural transfer of information. That seems to be really growing to be super important, even more important in many cases. Biological evolution takes a back seat to cultural evolution. It's slower. It's way slower. We pick up new trends, new things that are happening around us. It changes so fast. So with the way that you're remembering information, what does that have to do with memetics, with the cultural information transfer?
Well, how did we used to do it? We used to do it by stories, right? So everything was transferred to the next generation through storytelling, right? I mean, I guess that's how it's related, in that that is how it used to be done. I mean, again, just stories is a good way to help people learn things, new information.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then this is something that I think I've talked to you about in a little bit of detail, and I want to see if we can address it again. Do you think that practicing memory, encoding things better, using more of areas of our brain, visuals, other senses, do you think that that potentially alleviates or offsets delays the onset of things like Alzheimer's or other neurodegenerative diseases?
So what the research shows right now is that there's no way to prevent you from developing Alzheimer's or another form of dementia. As of today, no one has any idea how to prevent it from happening if you're destined to get it down the line. But what you will find a lot of research on is this idea of cognitive reserve. So if people wanted to look up what I'm talking about. Google cognitive reserve or otherwise look it up. And this, what they think is that by engaging in rigorous brain exercise, so just exercising your brain a lot in general, can help you build up this cognitive reserve. Basically, you can think of it as being more brain muscle, extra brain muscle. And if you do develop some form of dementia down the line, they think that having this cognitive reserve can make you more resistant to the disease. So in other words, it's going to take more years before the disease will start to affect your everyday life. So you can gain some extra years of mental clarity that you would not have had without that reserve. And one of the best ways, they say, to build up a huge cognitive reserve is by learning new languages, because that builds up so many extra connections in your brain. But
you now
also
think
crossword
share in 2 languages.
So you're building so many extra connections in your brain. But even by doing, you know, crossword puzzles and Sudoku, I don't know how to pronounce that word.
Sudoku,
that can that's good brain exercise. So by
chess maybe, right? That kind of stuff.
Chess is great mental exercise, brain exercise as well. And again, this sort of memory training, if you stick to it, is also going to be very good brain exercise. Nowadays, in some treatment programs, actually, in addition to giving patients that have some form of dementia medication, they actually have them engage in brain exercise programs as well to try and slow the deterioration down. But again, it can't prevent it from happening, but it can help delay possibly the onset of serious, the serious symptoms to where it's really going to affect your everyday life.
So building up cognitive reserves is crucial, and we can get there by actually practicing encoding information using different parts of our brain, potentially learning languages.
This is definitely one way to engage in rigorous brain exercise, but you can do a lot of other things as well.
And other people will, like you said, perceive you as more intelligent, and you'll be able to climb up this societal economic structure more quickly, build friends that are impacting more people faster, all that good stuff. It's really important. Really just a little bit of extra preparation, a little bit of effort really goes a long way and really sets you apart. These sorts of, I guess a lot of times they would refer to this as soft skills training maybe, but those little things really set you apart and make you, it helps to make you more memorable, right? Compared to other professionals that are just like everyone else, that are always looking things up and don't have that extraordinary memory ability. You're nailing it again. It's the little bit of extra work will go a hugely long way. It really does. And that's just right before you're going into your meeting. Just review your notes. Try and memorize the 3 most important things. Add visuals to those. Add different senses to those, and you will be more outstanding for other people, and then you'll become more memorable. This is all really important and really relatable. I think our audience is going to really like this and feel like, put this stuff to practice. And me too. I got a lot of work to do. This guy's epic. Thank you. One example that I think everyone can relate to, where what I was just talking about, that little bit of effort goes a long way, is names. So many people out there have just come to accept, well, I'm not good at names, and they have all these ways to get around remembering someone's name, right? I even saw a hilarious graphic that said that. It was something along the lines of, my problem is, as soon as I get introduced to someone, I don't even listen to what they say. People have just come to accept that as their reality, that they're just not good with names, and they find ways to get around remembering people's names. And sure, you can get around, you can get along fine going about your business life, your career in that way, but you're definitely not going to be as impressive, and you're really not taking full advantage of the potential that's there. You can really build much better relationships with people and get much more out of business networking if you can make it a point to get better at remembering names. One profession that is crystal clear in the power in this, politicians. So I've actually been hired by some politicians for private coaching with me on just names alone, because when a politician attends a fundraiser,
They want to know the name of everybody there. They want to know their spouse's name. They want to know things they like, things they don't like, so they know what topics to bring up in conversation, what topics not to bring up in conversation, right?
That's massive.
Politicians are crystal clear on how this helps to make you a more popular and more likable person. In their case, it will help them to get more votes and more money for their campaigns. But in the case of business professionals and entrepreneurs, this can help you to get more out of business networking, more business, maybe funding for your whatever projects you're working on, because it helps you to build better relationships with people. You're more likable, a more popular person. And really, it isn't so much effort. It doesn't take that much effort to really make a dramatic improvement in your ability to remember names. I'll quickly go over some steps. So step number 1, and these are even independent of the visual based stuff. So just these 4 steps, I mean, anybody watching this should have no problem putting this into practice. Step 1, whenever you're introduced to someone, make it a point to immediately repeat their name.
Hi, Chester.
And shake their hand,
Good
right?
To meet you, Chester.
Yeah, exactly. So nice to meet you, Alan, or pleased to meet you, Alan. It might seem obvious, but a lot of times, as you mentioned, when someone is telling you their name, you're paying no attention at all to the name, right? So step 1 forces you to pay attention for 1 second. That's the only way you could repeat it back. Step 2, early on, just ask any question using the name. So Alan, how do you know Chester? Alan, how long have you been involved with this organization? Just one question early on reinforces the name. Step 3, think of a connection between the name and anything at all that you already know. Maybe Alan, it's Alan Thicke. It could be a famous person, an actor, a character from a TV show, but it could also be something as simple as you have a friend or family member that has that same name. Think of a connection between the name and really anything at all that you already know is going to help you remember the name better. And step 4, actually use the name when you're saying goodbye. So see you later, Alan, or Alan, it was great to meet you. Hope to see you again sometime. Just use it one time when you're leaving that person. That's going to go a long way toward helping you remember more names the next time you see those people. So those 4 steps, I think anybody should have no problem putting that into practice, and that's going to help you to focus more, pay attention to names, and this is huge in business.
It is. It's massive. Hey, Chester, nice to meet you. Chester, how long have you been practicing memory? Chester and chest. And then, thanks, Chester, great to meet you. And just by doing that, you're totally right. In business, the politician example is really crazy important, because that same example applies to business. The more you know about your coworkers and their spouses, and the more that you know about what their interests are, the more that you'll be able to get along, the more likable you'll be. All that kind of stuff is directly applicable, again, to business as well. So important. Yeah,
this small thing is actually really huge. It seems like something small, but it can give you a huge advantage, and again, set you apart from other people and make you more memorable. With the names, I tend to focus on the positive, but there's also a big negative aspect. By not remembering people's names, or maybe even worse, calling them by the wrong name, especially if you do it, done it a few times already, it really can be detrimental and damaging to business and personal relationships. That's actually the main reason why I quit my first job out of college. I worked at a law firm here in San Francisco. I'm not going to say the name of the firm, but even after more than a year of working there, almost 2 years actually, there were still some attorneys there that would call me the wrong name. And at one point I was absolutely furious about it, and it's the main reason why I quit that job. So this can also be very detrimental to business and personal relationships.
And some people are rewarded by the carrot, some people avoid the stick, and this is a good is a good example of avoiding the stick. Practice remembering people's names so you don't have the detrimental consequences associated with them. Okay, so we'll do a couple thoughts to wrap it up. I like how you talk about spaced repetitions, also very important. So when you do hit those 3 visualizations and you're adding other senses to whatever you need to remember for today, again, do it an hour before, do it 2 hours before, do it right when you wake up, do it a couple times that day.
Yeah, so the idea here is spaced repetition as opposed to many repetitions done just the night before, cramming, right?
Cramming,
so cramming, that's how most students would study. That is good for short-term memory only, so you can spit it out on the exam, but then it's vanished from your memory, as opposed to as it applies to students, you might want to review right after the lecture, maybe the end of the week, 2 weeks after, a few weeks after that. I talked with researchers at Washington University in St. Louis about this. They flew me out there, did some memory experiments on me along with some Jeopardy champions. It was something called the Superior Memory Project at WashU in St. Louis, and they confirmed with their research that spaced repetition is the ideal way to lock things into long-term memory, as opposed to cramming
from each other.
Well, there are different ways. There are actually apps out there that are built along this concept of spaced repetition. So the app will actually tell you when you should probably do your next review. So this is a known concept in psychology as it applies to learning. Spaced repetition is much better than 20 repetitions done today, at least for long-term memory.
Let's walk you through a couple quickies on the simulation list. Do you think, what is consciousness? Do you think it's centralized in the nervous system?
This is not my area of expertise, Alan. I was worried about these simulation questions.
Well, you'll just
what is consciousness?
Yeah.
I have no good response to that.
Do you think
I should have asked to review these ahead of time.
Yeah.
What is consciousness? Why don't you give me some theories and I'll tell you which one I think I agree with the most. Can we do it that way?
Let's ask you the another question associated with this is
that's a tough one.
It is, yeah. Do you think it's centralized in the body, or do you think it potentially can live outside of the body as well?
That I don't know, man. That is a difficult question. Can it be both?
Yeah.
I think it can be both. I mean, I think that it probably originates in the body, but I don't think that means it can't exist outside of the body as well. Yeah.
Chester, do you think that there's a global ruling elite?
Do I think that there's a global ruling elite? I think there probably is. I mean, I'm again, this is not my area of expertise at all, but I've seen some, I've read some stories and seen some videos as to that effect, basically. The Rothschilds, I don't know how to say their name. Supposedly they rule.
Own the centralized banks.
So they really have a lot of influence on every aspect of society. I think that may very well be the case.
And should one endeavor to join the global ruling elite to make a positive impact on the world?
I don't think you need to make a positive impact on the world. I don't think you need to be at that ruling level to really have an impact on millions, if not hundreds of millions of lives.
How should we maximize human potential?
Personal development is my area of expertise. That's what I focus on really. Mine is specifically memory, but I strongly, and really before I won the U.S. Memory Championship, before I got into this as a career, I was always really into personal development, and that's what sparked my interest in the U.S. Memory Championship, and really a big part of why I'm doing what I'm doing now is I really believe that we should try to strive to make ourselves better in whatever we're currently weak in. If we learn the right strategies and put in some training and practice, we can really improve ourselves, and that's going to help have a positive impact on society, right? We're going to improve society in general by improving ourselves.
And you're gonna tell me right now that it's too bad that I didn't remember. It's like I'm gonna look. I have it pulled up right now. Yeah, sophrosony is the word. Sophrosony is building up the excellence of character until you become a very well-balanced individual and have really strong self-control and temperance, purity, that kind of stuff. So sophrosony. I love your focus on self-development for maximizing human potential. I think that's crucial, and it needs to be passed down from parents to kids at a really young age.
Yeah.
And then accelerated by teachers and community. Okay, what's the most beautiful thing in the world?
What is the most beautiful thing in the world? Whoa. Now that you can go in many directions with this, huh? Let's say the human mind. I mean, that's. I really think that it is an incredibly beautiful thing, the human mind. It amazes me as I travel all over the world, giving these presentations and seeing, having the privilege to experience so many unique things. Oftentimes I'm just absolutely amazed at what humans are capable of, things that we've created, things that we've come up with.
Exactly.
But this all originated from the human mind, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So just that little bit of evolutionary advantage from a monkey, and then boom, here we are making cool things into the world, and that's
I find
amazing.
myself constantly being just blown away by things that we've accomplished, things that humans have come up with. It's
Exactly.
really, really amazing. Yeah.
And then last couple is, are we alone in the cosmos?
You're asking all these tough questions that are not memory related. Or maybe they are. I'm just not used to answering them as being memory related.
That's what we like to do. We like to stretch really brilliant people into new zones of areas.
I don't know how brilliant I don't know if I would describe myself as a brilliant person, but I'm just really an expert in the memory training, you know, specifically. The answer to that question, I personally believe that there is.
There's other life?
Yeah, I think there is, just because of the vastness of the universe. I just find it tough to believe that we're the only, intelligent life out there.
And then the last question is, are we in a computer simulation?
I think that one's ridiculous, to be honest with you. I see people, you know, I'm not going to say who, but you probably know who believes in that, some famous person, but I just think it's ridiculous. No. So my answer is no, definitely not.
Interestingly enough, though, don't your answers contradict a little bit? The vastness of the cosmos and the vastness of the universe, and intelligent species arising, figuring out how to colonize stars, and figuring out fusion, can then maybe do something like quantum compute our reality.
No, I don't think it's contradictory. No.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Chester, this has been amazing. I think, you know, we have so many takeaways from this, but we got to practice the story method, the journey method. We got to practice figuring out how to add new senses, especially the visual sense, into the information we're trying to encode and then recall later. Chester Santos has a great program on his website, internationalmanofmemory.com, and we're going to put the link in the bio. And definitely go check it out. It's a 6-hour program.
It's over 6 hours of interactive training on names, facts, figures, exam material, foreign language vocabulary. It covers many different areas in the online training, and I set up a discount code simulation to give 60% off the course. So,
whoa, guys, 60% off using the code simulation. That's really nice of you.
Yeah.
Awesome. And then you guys, huge thanks for tuning in at home. If you guys had a good time, please, you know, Chester's also on Twitter at, what is your handle?
Chester J. Santos, actually.
Chester J. Santos.
Have the middle initial in there. Chester J. Santos.
And we're going to put the link in the bio as well to follow follow Chester and his work and his travel and his impact that he's having across the world right now. Huge thanks for tuning in. If you guys had a good time, found this content useful, definitely give it a like, give us a comment down below, give us a subscribe, share it with other people. And then we have a whole cool curriculum on Patreon. Become a patron if you find it useful. Get access to conversations with guests, get early access to live events, get access to exclusive content, join the community and join supporting us, having these great conversations with really smart people like Chester. And Thank you, Ron Vargas, for crushing it behind the TriCaster and doing the directing and producing. Thank you, River Studios, for having us here today. And thanks, Chester. Greatly appreciate it.
Thank you.
Man.
Thanks a lot. Thanks for having me on. Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
about it, and they get people really excited about making relatable examples about what they know. And then we ask them questions that come from, different angles and different areas. Like we didn't get to talk about, new technologies like genetic engineering, or maybe